everyone, it's the Sky Priestess. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that's been on my mind as of late. I have been recovering from an immense expenditure of energy in January and February with the Creatrix session, so I've just been in recovery for the past few days. But today I want to talk about Palestine. Simply because I don't know how long it's going to be possible for me to talk about it in this format on this platform because of new policies that are coming in, and I just kind of want this to be a record in case that record was ever needed. What we're seeing in the world right now is an unprecedented level of awareness, of community, of love, of a focused desire and will to create change in the world. We are seeing this happen right now. It is happening in real time. It may not be in the centers of supposed power in the world. It may not be governments, but in people, we are seeing people rise up. This is the revolution. This is the change. This is our moment where humanity as a collective decides whether or not we are actually going to find multidimensional awareness, or if we are just going to drag this planet down till it expels us. And whilst there are many, many, many causes in the world, Palestine being one of them, there's Sudan, there's Congo, there's Tigray, there's so many things that are happening in the world right now, Palestine is that flagship point. And the reason it is a flagship point from a spiritual perspective is the amount of energetic and psychic focus that has been placed on it for thousands of years as the Holy Land. And this anchoring is honestly what gives, from a spiritualist perspective, what gives this place such a profound sense of importance, such a point of resonance, such a point of a condensation of psychic energy that reflects where we are as a whole. So this isn't to take away from anywhere else. I'm saying that this is, as in fact, it's my brother who originally said this, Palestine is the litmus test of the soul. Does this mean that you need to support everything and everyone? No. It means that you need to do your part in getting out there in whatever format you can and calling for a ceasefire and saying that it is important to stand with the innocent. It is important not to let antiquated ideas of entitlement or using religion or some narrative of the past as some legitimation to go and murder the innocent. It means taking a profound stand against that. And there are so many people that we see who are not saying anything. Whether it's people who talk about spirituality, whether it's people who talk about religion, whether it's people who talk about astrology, whether it's people who talk about politics, whether it's people in the media industry, we are seeing so much silence. The silence is deafening. If not for the roar of people who are waking up and who are wanting to say, hey, no, this is not the way we want the world to run. As I said, this is a flagship point. But it doesn't mean that everything else is, undeserving of attention or that it is less important. No, there's a lot of imbalance that's in the world right now. So this is a time where we are all asked to take that stand in the way that we can. And as I said, given the policies on this platform coming up, I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk about this, so I'm also going to shift over to TikTok, which I have not wanted to, but I may have to. The platform will also still be here on Instagram and on YouTube, but the political content may be more focused on there. But this is a time where we really need to continue speaking up. I know some of you were super, super enthused and excited about South Africa and the ICJ, and I told you it's not going to work. It's not going to work because it's not binding. And that's exactly what happened. And with the United Nations basically, or the United Nations vote basically being vetoed by the United States, well, we see that happening as well. And this was actually something, I don't know if I've told this story before, but I actually have a long-standing history with this particular question. I remember I was 19, and I was starting my master's program in Germany. And at that time, they were having a presentation. It was, I think, the United Nations High Council for Refugees or something like that. And at that time, Mary Robinson ran that particular organization. And I think she was the former prime minister, former president of Ireland, or something like that. The details are a bit vague. This was like more than 20 years ago, I think, at this point, or close to. And she was doing this presentation on how the United Nations had been saving Palestinians. And at that time, I was still not quite clear on my position. I had been hearing a lot of stuff, but what was very clear to me was that the United Nations as an organization was bent on pushing itself as the martyr, as the savior, as the good guys, by making sure that that the people that got as much as they could to just keep going and just keep surviving. And so I asked a question to them. I said, look, what are you actually doing to fix the problem? All you are doing is recreating the cycle. What are you actually doing? And there was like thunderous applause from the people there, many of whom were probably people of Arabic descent. Because 20 years ago, I saw that these institutions were not there to actually change the situation. They were there to carry a little badge that called themselves white knights and saviors, whilst looking like the good guys, but just giving people enough to keep that situation alive and going without actually giving enough to create change. So these institutions are not going to do much. The thing that is going to do much is people actually raising their voices and calling for change. And I know it seems tough right now because the quote-unquote status quo wants you to be silent. It wants you to be silent. It wants you to pretend like all of this never happened. It wants you to pretend to kind of turn the wheel of awareness backwards, where people were not able to see firsthand on their phones a live genocide unfolding. I mean, for me, the thing that really, I don't want to say won me over, but the thing that really shifted my perception was looking at the live footage from journalists like Motas, like Hind, like Bishan, and now little baby Lama Jamus. There are all of these people who are literally documenting what is happening right now. And if we choose to ignore it, if we choose to turn a blind eye, what in heaven's name are you doing talking about spirituality? What are you doing talking about humanity? What are you doing talking about compassion? Yes, we can't fix all the problems of the world, but that does not mean that we should be blind to them. And yes, could I, make this platform all about giving you what you want about astrology? Yeah, I could do that. I could have a lot more followers. I could do all of that stuff, but that wouldn't be real because denial is the friend of the enemy. Denial goes hand in hand with spiritual corruption. And the people who are practicing denial right now, even in the name of fucking self-care, are falling into that trap. Because if you are trying to isolate yourself, if you are trying to create a bubble from which you are kind of blanketing yourself from what is happening in the world, you're not on the spiritual path. You're just trying to find comfort using the name of spirituality. So, and that is what I still see happening. Is this an easy position to take? No, it's not. People don't want to wake up. Generally speaking, people don't want to wake up. They want to continue going on this point till, I don't know how many decades it's going to take, but till we eventually reach a point where they have to wake up or submit to the fact that capitalists are effectively changing the way the world works while we try to distract ourselves. One of my favorite videos on this was a very clever woman, and she basically started the video saying, well, there's a new video of the live action Avatar coming up, and then right there she switched over to, now I have your attention, this is what's happening here. And people are allowing themselves to get distracted. They are allowing themselves to become desensitized. They are allowing themselves to have their agenda dictated to them by supposedly neutral social media algorithms, and they are not neutral. Now, I'm not someone who likes conspiracy theories. I'm not someone who likes the idea of a shadow government and, big tech moguls effectively shaking hands with each other, controlling and shaping the narrative that humanity has of itself. Unfortunately, this is what is true. I'm not a fan of these theories. I'm not a fan of these ideas, but the more we actually see, the more we see that this is the reality. And actually preserving our authenticity, preserving our consciousness, preserving our right and our ability to voice truths, even in the most desperate of situations, is becoming the mark of spiritual courage at this time. As I was looking at another post yesterday, and someone was writing, who gives a fuck whether or not you have achieved some great Kundalini consciousness if you cannot take the time to call out for the end of the killing of children? And I completely agree with that sentiment. There is a difference when we talk in the spiritual world, when we talk about heart-based spirituality, we must engage. We cannot afford to disengage. We cannot afford to ignore what is right in front of us. That is spirituality from the heart. Because civilizations that are still being, pedestalized and, they're being touted as the end-all, be-all. Civilizations thousands and thousands of years ago, India in particular, mastered the idea of spirituality that was more up above. And what happened? Look at it now. Look at its politics. Look at its religion. Look at the way it treats women. Look at the way it treats minorities. How is that our current model? And this is why I've been a very, very strong critique of this approach for a large part of my public career. We cannot afford to just look at what is up there. That is an outmoded idea of spirituality that disrespects the body, it disrespects the earth, and it disrespects the sacred feminine. And this is what is happening right now within spiritual circles when it comes to Palestine, when it comes to Tigray, when it comes to Congo. It's not around me. I can't handle it. I've got to sit and meditate until I feel better and send love and light and healing and prayers for it to change. Has that worked? It has not. The only thing that creates change is you. It is your willingness to engage. Your willingness to get out there, your willingness to call your representatives, your willingness to show up in groups, your willingness to create alternative systems. And in the United States, and my brother was telling me that I should make a video of this, but I have not been well for the past couple of days, so I've just been laying low and laying quiet. But in the United States, right now, that it is the time to create an alternative political structure. Because people are so used to thinking in terms of this binary. And I just watched this phenomenal interview by Bassem Youssef, which I highly recommend. It's on BBC's Hard Talk. He basically goes, I refuse to be held hostage by the idea that if you don't vote blue, you're going to get Trump. And he's calling out for that binary. He's a comedian, he's fearless, and he's calling out for that binary to be broken. We need alternatives. Alternatives do not exist when you try to escape. Alternative exists when you are willing to create them. One of the lessons I learned during my training as a political scientist, looking at the Indian system, it's not about being able to be a huge force of change. It's about having enough numbers to be the kingmaker. You can call it the change maker if you prefer, but that's a term that they use. In a system where you have two very large parties, you just need a group that is large enough to make the majority. And it is that group that holds the power. And people don't want to think about that. They're not thinking about that because they're too busy plugging out. They're plugging out because they're saying they're overwhelmed. Yes, you are going to be overwhelmed. You are going to be overwhelmed for the rest of your life until you start dealing with what is actually present. And that goes against what the self-help industry talks, because the self-help industry is designed to make you feel inadequate. It's designed to make you disengage. It's designed to give you tools to keep fixing yourself and not looking at what is happening around you. Am I the first person to say this? No, I'm not. Many people have said this, but they are being ignored. And the people who are not being ignored are being pedestalized, which is worse than being ignored. It's like, oh wow, clap hands. You're so brave. You're so wise. You're so this. You're so this. But do they actually do anything about it? No, they don't. So continue your activism, continue your advocacy, continue feeling uncomfortable, continue feeling angry, continue feeling all of those things, because by God, that is what you are supposed to be doing as a spiritual being in the here and now. If anyone tells you that you're supposed to be happy, that you're supposed to be cheerful, that you're supposed to be joyful in the face of what is happening, then that person obviously has a very different idea of what spirit is. Because right now, the dividing lines are coming on the basis of whose God said what, who is supposed to be whose chosen people. And those terms, those concepts are basically being used to justify some of the greatest evils of the world. We must challenge it. Because as far as I'm aware, whatever you want to call God, goddess, divinity, it would not stand for the killing of children. Josh agrees. But effectively, that is what I wanted to wake up this morning and talk about, because that is what has been on my mind. We need to continue our presence, our activism, our passion, our commitment. It doesn't matter who is silent. What matters is who is speaking. This morning I was looking at Hind Chowdhury, who's a very prominent female journalist from Gaza. And she was just heartbroken. She was talking about how she was coming back to the place near her home, and she saw, a bunch of people had been bombed in a car, and the contents of their brains spilled out, and she's heartbroken. And it's not the first time she's seeing it. It happens often. What are we doing? What are we doing? And I ask this to everyone who claims to be on the path of truth, who claims to be doing something good in the world. What are we doing? What are you doing? I know what I'm doing, and I'm doing what I can. And if you can say that honestly to yourself, that is good enough. But to those who have not done that, I ask you to step up, do more, engage more. And if you feel your voice is alone, find people with whom you can speak the truth to those who will listen. That is the beauty of social media. And hopefully, if more and more and more people keep pushing back against these ridiculous forms of censorship that they're trying to push onto us, hopefully we will make this a fairer and clearer space so that we can continue speaking truth to power. What it is that needs to be said, what it is that needs to be done. Because otherwise, you can isolate yourself in a bubble, you can surround yourself with however many spiritual techniques, gurus, guides, guardians, mantras that make you feel better. But if you stood by and did nothing, while millions and millions and millions of innocents are slaughtered, at the end of the day, it is you and only you who has to face yourself in the mirror. So that's what I wanted to say. Take care. Very many blessings. Tacha for now. Bye-bye.